This is Chapter 2, Section 1 of Civics, the First Governments in America. In this chapter, we will be discussing how the government that we know today came to be. So the original 13 colonies in the United States were British colonies, meaning that they came from England. A colony is a group of people who leave their native country to form a new settlement that is connected or affiliated to their native country. So pretty much it was these people from England came over on a boat and had these new settlements in the new land. Now, the original 13 colonies, they were part of England. There were settlements uh, south that were part of Spain, and Central North America were part of the French. But the United States started as British colonies. So even though when the people came over, they were starting their new settlement, they were still part of the British government. Like I said, they were still under the British Empire rule. They needed to establish their own government here because they were 2 months away. That's how long it took to sail across the Atlantic Ocean over to the New World. And if something needed to happen, they couldn't wait for the government in England to make a decision. So they needed to set up their own day-to-day governments in the colonies. So here's the mother country. So this is England. So all these people were coming over to the New World, and so this is the British, um, colonies, the original 13. There they are. So all these people new to this land, set it up their own little towns and everything like that. And anytime you have a group of people, there needs to be some kind of law and some kind of order. So they needed to set up their own governments, but under the umbrella of England. So just real quick, England, and Britain are the same thing. So England's really just one country, and then Great Britain is, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and England together. So England, British, it's all the same thing. All right, so these are just the original 13 colonies. Obviously, Pennsylvania was one of the original 13. So forming these first governments in the colonies, in Virginia in 1619, the first, real one was the House of Burgesses. And the House of Burgesses were elected citizens that were representatives of that area that they came from. Um, if you were a Burgesses, you were an elected official from your town in Virginia, and you would go to, it was actually in Williamsburg, Virginia. This is actually the actual meeting place that you can go visit now, where all these Burgesses would meet and discuss, uh, you know, the laws of Virginia. And, they were considered a legislature. So, and a legislature is a group of people chosen to make laws. So this House of Burgesses meaning elected officials from different areas in Virginia, came here to make laws. And this was really the first legislature in the new colonies. So, as we talked about England, or the British Empire, whatever you want to call it, they had a monarchy, they had a king. Um, they were too far away and too busy fighting wars to govern these colonies and pay too much attention to them on an individual daily basis. So they needed to sort out their day-to-day process of ruling themselves. So they would give each of these colonies a charter. And the charter is a document giving the colony permission under the British rule to create a government. So hey, look, you're still serving the king, but here's permission to go start your government to handle the day-to-day aspects of your life. So how it kind of went was if a colony challenged the authority of England, like, hey, we kind of want to separate from England, don't want to be affiliated with you guys. Well, it's like, well, no. Um, we're going to take you down by force and make sure that you follow English rule and English law. So they were kind of still under that English umbrella. But since they were so far away, they did have a lot of freedom of what they would do. The charter also gave citizens of the colonies all the rights of an English citizen. So if you lived in the British colonies, you'd have this same rights as if you lived in England. So if you're a citizen in the colony, it was pretty exclusive to be a citizen. Usually you were white, be an adult male, and that you had to own property. Um, Most of the time, you had to be white, adult male, own property, and be of a certain religious affiliation, such as being Protestant, to be a citizen. So if you're Catholic or you're Jewish, you weren't going to be considered a citizen. So most of the settlers were Protestant when they came over. If you're Protestant, you're a member of the Christian church, but you don't believe in the Catholic Church. So you pretty much believe in the Bible and everything like that, but you don't believe in like the Pope or any kind of like the priests or anything like that. Protestants have their own way of believing in Christianity. So attaining this religious freedom, many of the first colonists came from England or other parts of Europe because they were seeking religious freedom. The country that they were coming from was strict or had some kind of religion that was, with the government that they did not appreciate and didn't want to believe in. So they needed to find a new place to practice the religion that they wanted. And obviously, that's what the Pilgrims is. They were called Puritans. They did not like the Church of England, and everybody knows the story. They got on the Mayflower and sailed to the New World and settled in Plymouth. But these Pilgrims eventually formed what's known as the Massachusetts colony. And so it was all based on, their religious beliefs. So this Puritan church was linked with the government of Massachusetts. So, if to give a little background, the day-to-day life of a Puritan was surrounded by their Puritan beliefs and their religious beliefs. So, of course, it would kind of fuse together with their government. But they did not allow any citizen that was not of Puritan belief to become a citizen of Massachusetts. So Roger Williams, one of these Puritan ministers in the Massachusetts, thought that the Puritan church had too much influence on the government itself. He wanted some separation between the government and religion. So he left and formed this new colony of Rhode Island. That's how Rhode Island was formed. In this new colony, citizens were free to participate in any religion that they desire and free to practice their beliefs. It's kind of hypocritical of the Pilgrims to flee Europe because they were prosecuted because of their religious beliefs, and they settled their new colony of Massachusetts, and then they exclude people and do the same thing that was done to them because of their religious beliefs. So the Williams, he formed this new colony, and everybody was free to practice any religion that they desired. So this kind of was a precursor to the First Amendment, freedom of religion. This is kind of like the first idea of that in the New World. So here's the Massachusetts Bay Colony. So this is where the Pilgrims kind of landed, and they kind of, settled here. And then Williams just kind of went over to the Rhode Island colony right here. So this is kind of how the beginnings of the notion of freedom of the press in the colonies started. So under British law, the colonies' newspapers, which was the main way of how information got spread to the colonists, were not allowed to criticize the British government. But in 1735, Peter Zenger, he's a newspaper editor in New York, he was criticizing this British government official because he was accepting bribes, he was interfering with elections, like this guy wasn't bad. So he thought he should do something, and what he did is that in an article he gave facts about the accusations he was making against this British official, saying that he's no good, that people have to be aware of this guy, elect him out of office. But the British government didn't like that too much, criticizing officials, so he was put on trial for libel. Zenger was put on trial for libel, which is a published false statement that damaged the reputation of a person. So, you know, that's what libel is. You're spreading false facts by printing it something and it's in print form. So what happens is that Peter Zenger's lawyer that in a democracy like England is supposed to have, and in the colonies, it depends on the well-formed and citizens, and that the freedom of the press is part of the right and responsibility that newspaper editors have to the public. Um, that you kind of have if the press is not allowed to express their opinions and facts about what's going on in government, then you really don't have a free country. So Zenger won his trial and resumed as the editor of the paper. So this was really the first case of freedom of the press in the colonies, and so this would be a precursor to also in the First Amendment, the freedom of press and the freedom of speech.